This is how I originally wanted to make this video. Some cinematic slider shots of the R6. A voiceover telling you just how amazing the R6 is, with some dramatic music in the background.
But lately, I've just done so much of that it has actually started to become kind of boring. So why not change it up a bit, and we're going to give a motovlog a try today, because I haven't tried that in quite a while. And it'll give me the perfect opportunity to try and defend not only the R6, but some sport bikes in general from stereotypes that you often hear. So being part of the sport bike community, you hear a lot of nonsense being spoken about other motorcycles. For example, Harley Davidsons, cruisers, adventure bikes, pretty much anything that isn't a sport bike. But I guarantee you that this isn't in one direction. Those other groups talk just as much nonsense about sport bikes. So even though we're all friends on the road, we're not at each other, for some reason we still talk badly about each other's motorbikes. I'm not sure why, but I'm here to defend the R6 because I've heard quite a few stereotypes or statements made about the R6 that now that I have one, I know aren't true, and that if you want to buy one, you shouldn't even worry about it. I don't really enjoy motovlogs anymore either. I mean, I've done a few, but they're just not that challenging or fun for me. You just ride around with a GoPro, edit out the bits where you mumble too much, and you don't even get to play with a cool camera like this or come to a nice location. Yes, the scenery is always changing, but I don't think that is for me. This is what I have been enjoying lately. So I think we're gonna do this video like this once again. So since we are talking about the R6, to contradict the sport bike theme, I've come to a little baby Forest to talk about the first thing that you often hear people say about the R6, and that is that it is outdated, which I strongly disagree with. The R6 often gets criticized because it wasn't updated for so long. A lot of people think that it wasn't updated for 10 years, which is only half true. It was actually only 8 years, because in 2006 and 2007 it was slightly different to this, even though it looks pretty close to it. And yes, 8 years is a long time not to update it, but the point is, for a 600 and for a super sport, there weren't many advancements taking place, so it was still very competitive in its class. So let's talk about the way that the R6 looks, because aesthetically the R6 wasn't updated for 8 years. The new R6 only came out last year in 2017, and personally I think out of the 600s in the last decade, this R6 has stood the test of time the best. It still has such sharp lines that things like Super Dukes and Panigales are going for, so it still looks modern in 2018, and if anything, in my opinion, it looks a bit better than the newest R6. But they still look like completely different motorcycles. I don't think they took many visual clues from this one into the latest R6. If you didn't know a thing about motorcycles, I don't think you'd peg this for a decade-old motorcycle, because it still looks amazing. And that is my favorite part about the bike, because being into photography, you need a good-looking bike. Otherwise it just ruins all your photos and there's no point going out. It's just not fun. These sharp lines are amazing. Every angle you can possibly shoot it from looks brilliant. So it might still look modern, but what the 2017 R6 brought to the party was a host of new electronics. So the new one came with ABS, riding modes, traction control, and a quick shifter, and pretty much everything else you could want in a 2018 motorcycle. But does that really change the experience of your riding? Personally, a 600 doesn't really need traction control. They don't have that much power like a 1000 does in any case. ABS, shouldn't a rider be able to do that? Yes, it's safety, now it's law. That's a brilliant thing in some cases, but I don't think it's going to stop you buying one of these. A quick shifter, you can get that on these. And riding modes, it's probably safer in the rain, but I think most riders know how to ride it in different conditions. And modes could be preference. I know a lot of people just ride their bikes in one mode, their entire ownership, if it can be changed. So if you hear the R6 being stereotyped as out of date, as an old motorbike, not enough electronics, looks outdated, don't believe it for a minute. Another stereotype about R6s that I hear all the time, even from people who have never even ridden one, is that it is uncomfortable. And that's just because it's a sport bike. People that haven't ridden them immediately assume that because it's in a racing position that all the weight is going to be on your hands and wrists and therefore is going to be uncomfortable, when that is not always the case. Now, it's no secret that amongst 600s, this generation of R6 is probably one of the most leaned over riding positions available. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it is uncomfortable. It's very cliche, but I always think that this bike fits me like a glove. It always feels like my leg is in the perfect position under the tank, my knees aren't too bent, too squashed up, and I'm leaned over the perfect amount. Now, I'm not tall at all, and that probably helps, but that's what I'm saying, that it's specific to the rider. Being shorter, less weight is actually on my wrists. And before you think that the only reason I think this is perfect is because I haven't tried any of the others, I owned a GSXR 600 for a full year, and this is far more comfortable. Even though the GSXR does claim to have a more relaxed riding position, it doesn't mean that it puts less strain on your wrists or arms. I never struggled with sore wrists, I don't on this, but the one thing that I always struggled with on a GSXR was sore shoulders, especially on longer rides. So the point that I'm trying to make is that you shouldn't write off an R6 or any sport bike for that matter without trying it first. Don't just assume that the riding position is uncomfortable, because believe it or not, over long distances, sometimes these can be a lot more comfortable than other bikes that you would expect to be comfortable. Remember, they are designed to have people on them for a long time and on a racetrack where they are being pushed to their limits. So to some extent, they are designed to be comfortable. It's pretty much impossible to try and film over here. So one of the more recent stereotypes about the R6 and sport bikes in general is that they are not for the road. And I think that is mainly down to the latest craze of naked bikes, and more specifically super nakeds. I'm not going to pretend that the R6 is the perfect bike for the road, because we all know that isn't what Yamaha were trying to achieve. They were going for a more track-oriented motorcycle, but they did remember to put on all the necessities to have a decent road bike. The only problem with riding an R6 on the road is traffic and how hot it gets in traffic. When you're in slow moving traffic, there's no air flowing through it, and therefore it starts to get hot. But after all, Yamaha did design it to be able to put up with that nonsense, even in hot South Africa. So it has really good fans, and the minute they get going, it cools the bike down instantly. So it's not unrideable. And even though it gets hot, the regulators on these things are pretty tough, unlike Suzuki's, so they can withstand it as well. The only way that there's actually a reason to complain about riding a bike like the R6 on the street is because the super naked class has come such a long way recently. Having a bike with horsepower figures like a liter bike, immense torque, and in a riding position that is hugely comfortable on the street is a hard thing to pass up. They also have less fairings, which means they can stay cooler and sometimes bigger radiators. But if you haven't been hooked on the super naked class yet, there's absolutely nothing wrong with them, and they can handle anything you throw at them, even on the street. But anyway, there are a few R6 stereotypes that I wanted to address, because this being my favorite bike in the entire world, it often bugs me. So if you have any more R6 stereotypes, let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this style of video, please hit that like button and let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.